Patrick Ward is the VP of Marketing at Formula.Monks, the technology services division of Media.Monks. Patrick has been featured in the New York Times, because he's so fabulous, Ad Age, Fast Company, Huffington Post, Business Insider, and many more, including he is a peer of mine on the Forbes Communication Council. I am so excited to have him here today. Patrick, welcome to Liftoff.
Thanks for having me, Jeannie.
All right, we've been talking forever about having you come on the show, and you're finally here in the chair. It's in real life. I'm so excited. So many questions to ask you. Let's talk about marketing. Let's talk about marketers, and let's see what excitement we can create out there. Sound good?
Absolutely.
All right. All right. Marketers often seem the most vulnerable to layoffs. I know it. You know it. I can tell you how many times I've had to lay people off or gone through it. Yet their efforts are so critical to company successes. How did we get here? When did marketing become the commodity that can be let go in times of challenging economics?
So the funny thing about marketing is if you look at like the last 20 years, marketers have had to learn so many new things. No field has changed more than ours. We've had to learn data, we've had to learn digital, we've had to learn social. Meanwhile, other fields, I'll use an example like accounting, they're still using the same double entry accounting that they've always used. And in the rush and the shiny object syndrome that some of the best marketers often love to embrace something new, they love to innovate, but that race to go to this new thing or this task means that they inadvertently sell against themselves, they commoditize themselves, and they're not aligning themselves with the business that really matters.
It's so interesting, and it's so true. In fact, I say to my teams all the time, nobody ever questions what the CFO says when they stand up there and talk about their results. But when a marketer stands up and talks about their results, good or bad, all of a sudden everybody else in the room is marketer and everybody else can do it better. But I think there's really some unique ways, and I know that you know them, to make sure that marketers are almost bulletproof. But let's start with what they're doing wrong. What is the biggest mistake that most marketers make that cripples their efforts for advancement budget?
So the biggest problem is they're actually over-educating. And we say this all the time, the concept of educating your customer, educating your stakeholder. And while that is a wonderful tendency, the fact of the matter is the other business leaders, like you mentioned, the CFO, they don't care. They want to use a common language. And so by trying to get people to understand what marketing is, what you're all about, you're actually doing yourself a disservice. You would be better off changing your approach towards what are the metrics I could understand and use that language. How can I speak the CFO's language? How can I speak my sales leader's language? How can I speak my CEO's language? When you start doing that, you're not going to sell against yourself, as opposed to shouting from the rooftops of, hey, marketing is about X. That is not the way to do it. When you do marketing is all the wonderful things, people's eyes glaze over because they just want to know how your function contributes to the business.
If you were to give 3 tips of advice outside of this one for marketers to stamp their authority in the workplace, what would it be?
So I think the biggest one here is about appreciating marketing's superpower. We spend all our time obsessed about our customers. We obsess about how people think, how people buy, and yet we somehow forget that same thing when we're applying it to our internal stakeholders. Like, use that superpower, because so many other functions don't actually think deeply about the psychological ramifications. If we apply that same tactic to our CEOs and our boards, suddenly we're going to have a lot more authority. Then doubling down on that, rather than trying to do 100 different things, like we talked about the shiny object syndrome, actually, can you find the 3 things that matter, that really drive the business forward? Because the funny thing is, a lot of marketers don't realize this. Once you get to that end of the year and you've driven that success, no one's going to remember the 99 things you didn't do, as long as you did a couple of things really impactfully. And the final thing is learning those financial metrics. Like you say, I love that example of take a marketing dashboard and put it into the language that other people can understand. Because when you start speaking the same language as all the other business leaders, suddenly you have that seat at the table. Suddenly you have more influence and you are able to drive the outcomes forward, not just for your business, but for your entire team. And I know many marketing leaders love to dedicate the entire craft to serving their team. That's how you serve them best.
I love it. These are brilliant. And I feel like now you need to write a book about this because speak like a CFO, put everything in financial terms, focus on the top three things. You're right. Nobody thinks about the 99 things that didn't get done. And the third one, understand your audience. Key to marketers in our day-to-day jobs. Why don't we do that while we're marketing in the office as well? These are amazing. These are amazing. Patrick, thank you so much for being on Liftoff. I am sure you just changed a whole bunch of people's lives.
Thanks, Jeannie.
All right, everybody, stay tuned. If those tips didn't get you, we're going to give you some more great info right after the break.